I think though, because we were going to talk about this anyway, and you brought it up in the beginning, PS4 versus PS5, and why does it seem like the PS4 is going to be more collectible? Will the PS5 be collectible? I think it's an interesting topic, and
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
kind of like my 2 cents is I don't think we can predict what the PS5 will be. Like I always feel like collectability is something that you need to do in retrospect and see like, okay, what is the library, especially what comes out towards the end of the
Yeah,
console's life cycle, like that
yeah.
last 3 years, you start getting the more interesting, creative titles. So I'm not sure about that, but my instinct is, yeah, I think you're right when you say PS4 is the last real PlayStation console. And I feel like the PlayStation 4, if you're into, especially the PS4 Pro, if you're into gaming from, let's say, 2015 until 2020, like the PlayStation 4 is a good place to play all of those games. They
Yeah.
run well. They're Even though the prices are going up, I still think they're reasonably affordable. And I don't know how many people do this, but ever since I got my PlayStation 5, I play all my PS4 games on the PlayStation 5 because it has that boost mode. It
Hmm.
loads them. You have to get an external hard drive, but I have an external NVMe drive, and I put all the games on there, and they run. It's like buttery smooth. So whether you're doing that on the Pro or the PS5, you can really experience a lot of this library. So I think that's why the PS4 is the winner now, but we'll just have to see what happens with the PS5.
Yeah, I agree. Although, like, I do I brought this to you because I thought it would be a good topic to talk about. Because it is interesting. How some collectors talk about the PS5 in, like, Reddit or other group chats that I frequent with other collectors, and I when I read their comments, it it seems very jumping the gun. Like, everyone's just like, oh, PS5 isn't, the collectible console. And the thing is that a lot of the consoles that you're in now, you probably don't have the hindsight to see that the console is collectible in the future. Now, from my perspective, when I look at the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, um, it's really hard for me to find the gems that are suitable for me, that I would, go, oh, that's something that I want on the PS5. Um, I don't see the gems that I would normally see on the PS4 on the PS5, and I think it has a lot to do with certain games being, and the thing is that I'm excluding games from, like, limited run or any of those limited places. I'm talking about if you just go to, like, Amazon. If you just go to Amazon and then you go, all right, I want to find, like, something that I've never played before on, like a gem, like, what didn't you recently buy a game on the PS5? That one looked like a gem. From the Humble Games one, it looked
No,
like
that was the PS4.
that was PS4. Oh, well, there
Yeah.
you go. So, you know what I'm talking about, right? The one that looks like Metroid.
Yeah, which one? It's funny because I was telling you I got some non North American ones, so I've been returning them, but I think that
Oh,
was like
right.
Ghost Soul or something.
Something like that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that game looked like a gem. But the thing is that it's hard to find those games on the PS5. With the PS5, you just kind of find, the stuff that you find on the PS4 everywhere. You find your what's that game? The one that everybody plays that's like Dark Souls, Elden Ring. You
Elden
find your
Ring.
you find your Elden Rings, you find your Ghost of Tsushima, you find your Final Fantasies, but you don't find, like a Hat in Time, like that other game, or um well, Tales of Arise is one game that I think would probably be something I'll buy on the PS5.
A
But
lot of people like that.
yeah, I heard it was good. But that's what I'm saying, is like, it's from my perspective, it's really hard to find the gems Like when I'm searching for games for the Switch or the PS4, it's really easy. But for PS5, it's really hard, and it's probably because they cater to a more mainstream market. So that's why it's probably easier to find.
Yeah, I see. I was gonna say, like, when you pose the question, I was gonna say definitively it's the PS4, and I was gonna trash the PS5. And then I realized that that's some prejudice speaking because I feel like the PlayStation 5, primarily, also the Xbox Series X, this generation feels like it hasn't taken off. Like
Yeah,
it was slowed down by the pandemic, and we still haven't gotten those truly, I think, unique games. And
yeah.
then I was gonna say, I hate the fact that every time I buy a game for the PlayStation 5, it's gotta copy off the disc, download a million things, and it takes a
Mhm.
while to play the game. But then when I'm thinking about it, well, the PS4 was like that.
Some of the
So
games are, yeah, for sure.
yeah, so I don't know if that's going to be a hindrance to collectability. I just kind of think we have to wait. But yeah, there are no gems. Like if I think about it, there are only 3 games that I really was impressed by. The first one was the built-in game that came with it called Astrobot.
Oh
It
yeah, I heard
was
Astrobot was great.
Yeah, it was just this little, essentially tech demo for the console, and it was one of the most fun, creative games that I've played in the past 2 or 3 years. And then I think they're actually coming out with a full-fledged Astrobot in September,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna look for that. The other game that I loved was the Ratchet& and Clank. It was a
Okay.
great platformer and then really showed off what the system could do with ray tracing and fast loading and things like that. And then I did think Gran Turismo 7 was a good, beautiful looking Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
But outside of those 3, I really haven't put a ton of time in.
What about that RoboCop game that you were talking about? Wasn't that a PS5 game too?
Uh,
That one looked pretty much good like a gem. That looked like a gem.
yes, that was, although I didn't play it on PlayStation 5, I played that one on PC, but it is on
Oh.
PlayStation 5.
I
You
did
should
hear that the RoboCop game is great.
Yeah, you should look at, I told you about that website Woot, and I was
Mhm.
perusing that the other day, and they had that on PlayStation 5 at a pretty decent discount. Might have been 30 bucks, 25 bucks, something like that.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
PS5 needs to I don't know, man. Like I agree with what you said though. It doesn't feel like it took off at all. I I actually a lot of the times, I'm not gonna lie, I actually forget that it exists. Um because almost every game that comes out for the PS5 also comes out for PS4. So I don't really have a need to get the PS4 because I can just grab it somewhere else. But yeah, it hurts because usually when a new console generation happens, everybody is just running to get that new console. So
yeah, and I think one of the reasons it's being held back is because there's this cross-platform release strategy where if you're releasing it on the PlayStation 4, you're holding back, I think, some of those core technologies that were supposed to make the PS5 unique, like the ray
mm,
tracing and whatever that fast loading system was. You can't do that on the PS4
yeah.
to my knowledge. I mean, you could do HDR, but I'm not a big ray tracing HDR person. I think if you implement these technologies and I can't play it at 60 FPS, I'm not interested. But
Mm,
if all of the games that came out for the PS5 looked as wonderful as Ratchet and Clank and were that polished, I think people would be like, "Oh wow, now I see the difference." But those are few and far between.